Hello everyone, and welcome to my CBS B&B Full Today channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Steffy Forrester had reached a breaking point, and everyone in Los Angeles could feel the shift. For months, Sheila Carter's shadow had impended over the Forrester family like a storm pall that refused to pass. Every rumored scuttlebutt, every sideways regard, every unforeseen silence in a room could be traced back to the same name, Sheila. No matter how numerous times she claimed to be reformed, no matter how numerous pledges she made to stay out of trouble, chaos followed her like a curse. Steffy had tried to attend, tried to concentrate on her children, her marriage and her work, but the fear no way truly left. This time Steffy wasn't just replying. She was planning. And her thing was clear: Sheila Carter would be driven out of the megacity permanently. The first sign that Steffy was done playing defense came with her return to Forrester Creations with a renewed intensity. Those close to her noticed the change incontinently. She wasn't emotional or reactive. She was calm, controlled, and regular. This wasn't a woman acting out of fear. This was a strategist preparing for a final move. Steffy understood commodity pivotal that others had missed. For times Sheila thrived on chaos and attention. To master her, Steffy would have to be smarter, quieter, and far more patient than ever ahead. Steffy's provocation ran deeper than simple contest or old grievances. Every time she looked at her children, she was reminded of what was at stake. Sheila's presence wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. History had proven that over and over again. Steffy knew that as long as Sheila remained in Los Angeles, her family would no way truly be safe. Finn's complicated connection to his natural mama only made effects worse. Sheila used that bond like an armament, manipulating guilt, love, and fidelity whenever it suited her. Steffy saw the risk it took on Finn, indeed when he tried to hide it. And that was commodity she could no longer tolerate. Rather of defying Sheila directly, Steffy began laying root behind the scenes. She reconnected with the better she trusted fully, people who had suffered at Sheila's hands and understood the peril she posed. Quiet exchanges took place in services, living apartments, and private corners of the megacity. Steffy wasn't asking for vengeance. She was erecting agreement. She framed the issue not as particular but as necessary. Sheila's history wasn't just a collection of miscalculations. It was a pattern. And patterns, Steffy believed, didn't vanish. They repeated. Meanwhile, Sheila tasted the change before she understood it. The megacity felt colder toward her. Doors that had formerly been cracked open now felt forcefully shut. Assignations stopped coming. Exchanges ended suddenly when she entered a room. Sheila, who flattered herself on reading people, felt the shift and grew decreasingly paranoid. She tried to assure herself that she had survived worse, that she always set up a way to stay one step ahead. But commodity about Steffy's silence unnerved her. There were no outbursts, no dramatic competitions, just distance. And distance was dangerous. As Steffy continued her plan, she concentrated on exposing Sheila not through allegations but through verity. She knew that the fastest way to remove Sheila from the megacity wasn't force, it was inevitability. However, if her so-called reformation could be shown as fragile or false, also the megacity itself would reject her. If Sheila's once conduct could be connected to present consequences, Steffy didn't need to push Sheila out. Sheila would be pushed out by the weight of her own history. At the same time, Steffy worked precisely around Finn. She knew any plan that openly attacked Sheila would risk alienating him, and that wasn't a price she was willing to pay. Rather, Steffy deposited her conduct as defensive rather than corrective. She concentrated on safety, boundaries, and the future. Sluggishly, Finn began to see the pattern Steffy had been living with for times. Every step forward with Sheila came with two-way back. Every moment of calm was followed by pressure. The consummation didn't come each at formerly, but when it did, it shook him deeply. Sheila, hopeless to recapture control, began making small miscalculations. Her need to prove herself led her to push too hard, to fit herself where she wasn't wanted. She tried to secure a betters, but old scars resurfaced. People flashed back who she was. The megacity flashed back. And Steffy noticed every misstep, establishing them mentally, staying for the moment when they would count utmost. The turning point came when Sheila's conduct began to affect people beyond the Forrester family. A misreading then, a manipulation there. And suddenly Sheila was formerly again at the center of unwanted attention. Steffy didn't orchestrate the fallout, she simply didn't stop it. When questions were asked, Steffy told the verity calmly and without magnification. She didn't need to move anyone. The substantiation spoke for itself. As pressure mounted, Sheila set up herself insulated in a way she hadn't endured before. Indeed, those who formerly believed in alternate chances began to step back. Los Angeles had seen this story play out too numerous times. Redemption needed thickness, and Sheila had no way been suitable to maintain it. The walls closed in, and for the first time, Sheila realized that this battle wasn't one she could manipulate her way out of. Steffy's final move wasn't dramatic. There was no public showdown, no explosive battle. Rather, it was a quiet moment of clarity, where Sheila was forced to face a verity she had avoided for time. She no longer belonged there. The megacity wasn't hysterical of her presently. It was tired of her. And in curiosity, Sheila realized too late, was far more important than fear. By the time the dust settled, Sheila's options were gone. Staying meant constant scrutiny, legal pressure, and total insulation. Leaving offered the vision of freedom and the stopgap of starting over nearly differently. The choice was egregious indeed if it broke her pride. And just like that, the woman who had visited the Forrester family for times began to fade from the megacity she formerly scarified. For Steffy there was no festivity, only relief. She didn't see her conduct as a palm, but as a responsibility fulfilled. Her family could eventually breathe again. The peril that had followed them for so long was gone, not because of force, but because Steffy refused to let fear mandate her life any longer. As Los Angeles moved on, one thing came clear: Sheila Carter's reign of chaos had eventually met its match. And Steffy Forrester had proven that occasionally the most important way to win wasn't to fight louder but to stand firmer, suppose smarter, and no way back down from guarding what matters most. The days following Sheila Carter's growing insulation didn't bring her the peace she pretended to feel. Rather, they exposed commodity far more dangerous than rage or defiance. Despair. Sheila had always survived by conforming, by reshaping herself into whatever interpretation was necessary to stay close to power, to family, to applicability. But now, Los Angeles no longer wanted any interpretation of her. The megacity had closed species in a way Sheila couldn't manipulate. And Steffy Forrester, whether Sheila admitted it or not, was the mastermind behind that quiet exile. Steffy, meanwhile, wasn't resting. She understood that the most dangerous moment in any battle was the one where the opponent realized they were losing. Sheila might be cornered, but she wasn't inoffensive. History had proven that Sheila at her most vulnerable was frequently Sheila at her most changeable. Steffy remained watchful, balancing her public calm with private medication. She doubled security around her children, acclimated routines, and limited exposure. This wasn't sweat, it was discipline. Finn noticed the changes, though Steffy no way blazoned them. He felt the subtle tightening of boundaries, the implied pressure that dallied beneath their quiet moments together. Finn wanted to believe that the worst was over, that his mama's retreat from the megacity gestured an ending. But deep down, he tasted that undetermined trueness were still floating between him and Steffy. Trueness about fidelity, blood, and responsibility that couldn't simply vanish with Sheila's absence. As Sheila's social standing collapsed, her relationship with Deacon Sharp came decreasingly strained. Deacon had stood by her longer than Utmost, persuading himself that love and tolerance could succeed where judgment and fear had failed. But indeed Deacon couldn't ignore the signs presently. Sheila's preoccupation with Steffy, with reclaiming control, with refusing to accept the consequences of her history, made it insolvable to pretend she was truly changed. Cleric set up himself at a crossroads: stand by Sheila and threat losing everything differently, or eventually accept that some people couldn't be saved. Steffy anticipated that fracture. She had no way reckoned on Cleric as an supporter, but she understood the part he played in Sheila's survival. When that support began to crack, Steffy knew the windup was approaching. Without Deacon, Sheila would lose her last emotional anchor in Los Angeles. And without emotional anchors, Sheila had only two modes left: flight or destruction. Rumors began to circulate that Sheila was considering leaving the megacity. Some claimed she was looking at distant municipalities, places where her name carried no history. Others rumored that she was simply carrying another exposure, staying for the right moment to return stronger. Steffy didn't respond to the rumors. She had learned long ago that replying to Sheila's movements only fed her sense of significance. Rather, Steffy awaited for data, not enterprise. Behind the scenes, legal pressure still increased. Once incidents resurfaced, not through dramatic allegations but through procedural consequences. Sheila set up herself dealing with inquiries, restrictions, and monuments that her record followed her wherever she went. Every attempt to establish a fresh launch ran into the same wall. Her history wasn't chasing her. It was bedded in her. Sheila began to unravel in private. The confidence she projected intimately fractured behind unrestricted doors. She oscillated between condemning Steffy for everything and condemning herself for trusting that redemption was possible. In rare moments of clarity, Sheila honored the pattern that had defined her entire life. She always pushed too far, demanded too important, and refused to accept limits. And Steffy, unlike others before her, had no way squinched. Steffy's resoluteness didn't come without cost. There were nights when she questioned herself, wondering whether forcing Sheila out was truly justice or simply another form of control. She scuffled with guilt, especially where Finn was concerned. She knew he carried the weight of being Sheila's son, whether he wanted to or not. Steffy stressed that one day, Finn might begrudge her for making a choice that he felt should have been his to make. But every mistrustfulness dissolved when Steffy allowed. Of her children, she had seen firsthand how fear could shape a life, how trauma could echo through generations. She refused to allow Sheila's chaos to become her children's inheritance. However, so be it, if guarding them meant being seen as ruthless. Steffy accepted that part without reason. Finn ultimately brazened the verity on his own. The further distance Sheila placed between herself and the megacity, the clearer his feelings came. Love for a parent didn't bear blindness. He began to see how frequently his stopgap for Sheila's redemption had come at Steffy's expenditure. He honored the emotional labor Steffy had carried alone for times, always prioritizing safety while others batted fairness. That consummation marked a turning point in their marriage. Finn didn't suddenly reject Sheila, but he stopped defending her. He stopped making defenses. And most importantly, he stopped asking Steffy to compromise her boundaries for the sake of his guilt. It was a quiet shift but a profound bone. Sheila felt that loss acutely. Finn's emotional pullout cut deeper than any social rejection. For times, she had cleaved to the idea that fatherhood would redeem her, that being Finn's natural parent would guarantee her a place in his life. But biology, she learned too late, wasn't power. Respect was. And she had lost that long ago. The final collapse came not with a bang, but with prostration. Sheila grew tired of fighting a megacity that no longer replied to her. The schemes that formerly amped her now felt concave. The pitfalls went unanswered. The manipulations failed. Indeed, her wrathfulness began to fade, replaced by a crushing sense of impertinence. Sheila Carter, formerly stressed and ignominious, had come commodity far worse in her own eyes ignored. When Sheila eventually made the decision to leave, it was framed intimately as her choice. She spoke of fresh thresholds and new middays, of leaving the history before. But intimately she knew the verity. Los Angeles had rejected her. Steffy Forrester had succeeded not by destroying her, but by outliving her. Steffy watched the fate precisely. She didn't celebrate Sheila's departure, nor did she advertise Palm. Rather, she concentrated on rebuilding the emotional stability that had been eroded over time. She encouraged open exchanges within her family, addressed moping fears, and allowed herself moments of vulnerability she had laid over for too long. Strength, she realized, didn't mean constant alert. It also meant knowing when it was safe to exhale. Yet indeed, as calm returned, Steffy remained apprehensive of a verity she could no way forget. Sheila Carter had left ahead, only to return when least anticipated. Steffy didn't assume permanence where Sheila was concerned. What she did assume was preparedness. However, she'd not find the same shattered family staying for her, if Sheila ever came back. Los Angeles sluggishly acclimated to the absence of its most notorious wild card. Connections stabilized. Old injuries began to heal. But the impact of Sheila's presence and Steffy's stage against it left an endless mark on everyone involved. Boundaries were stronger. Trust was more precisely earned, and sweat no longer held the power it formerly did. In the end, Steffy didn't just drive Sheila out of the megacity. She changed the rules of engagement. She proved that chaos didn't always win, that silence could be stronger than battle, and that guarding one's family occasionally needed making insolvable choices without seeking blessing. And nearly beyond the megacity limits, Sheila Carter carried a familiar assignment into yet another uncertain future. The one adversary she had no way truly defeated was the woman who refused to be hysterical of her presently. Indeed, after Sheila Carter's departure from Los Angeles came public knowledge, the emotional residue she left behind dallied like bank after a fire. People spoke her name less frequently, but when they did, it carried weight. Sheila hadn't simply been a villain who came and went. She had altered the emotional climate of everyone she touched. For Steffy Forrester, the fate was as complex as the battle itself. Palm didn't arrive as relief alone. It arrived with reflection, responsibility, and an unsettling mindfulness that consummations were infrequently as final as they appeared. Steffy set up herself reconsidering moments she had buried for times. The fear she formerly felt when Sheila first re-enlisted her life resurfaced in unanticipated ways. It appeared in dreams, in unforeseen pressure when her phone chimed late at night, in the spontaneous way she scrutinized apartments before completely relaxing. Though Sheila was gone, the imprint of her presence had rewired Steffy's sense of safety. Yet rather of seeing that as weakness, Steffy reframed it as growth. Trauma survived because it signified. It demanded acknowledgement, not denial. Finn noticed this shift in Steffy, indeed when she didn't pass it. Their marriage, formerly tested by divided commitment, began to consolidate in a new, more honest way. Finn no longer tried to soften the history or reframe Sheila's conduct as Ms. New. He accepted the reality that loving someone didn't mean excusing them. That consummation was painful, but it also freed him. For the first time, Finn allowed himself to suffer the mama he wished Sheila could have been, rather than adhering to the vision she might still come. That emotional reckoning brought Finn closer to Steffy than ever ahead. He came more present, more deliberate in his part as a hubby and father. The family unit Steffy had fought so hard to cover eventually felt whole, not because Sheila was gone, but because denial was gone with her. Truth, indeed when heavy, had brought stability. Meanwhile, beyond the megacity limits, Sheila plotted to acclimate to a world where her name meant nothing. The obscurity she formerly claimed to crave felt stifling rather than liberating. Without followership, without adversaries to battle or victims to manipulate, Sheila was forced to defy herself in insulation. The patterns she formerly criticized on circumstance now goggled back at her without distraction. For the first time, Sheila questioned whether the chaos that followed her was commodity she created rather than endured. That tone examination was transitory still. Old instincts resurfaced snappily. Sheila had survived too important to believe reinvention was insolvable. She began to rebuild, precisely opting where she went, who she spoke to, and how important of her history she revealed. She learned from her miscalculations, or at least told herself she did. But one verity remained constant: Sheila had no way truly accepted losing. And in her mind, leaving Los Angeles was master. It was a pause. Back in Los Angeles, the Forrester family endured a shift in power dynamics that many had anticipated. Without Sheila as a constant trouble, old conflicts resurfaced with renewed clarity. Issues that had formerly been overshadowed by fear now demanded attention. Steffy set up herself navigating new pressures within the family, particularly around control, heritage, and leadership. Strength, she realized, was frequently misinterpreted as dominance. And she was determined not to become the kind of force she had just defeated. Steffy made conscious choices to lead else. She heeded more. She delegated. She allowed vulnerability into spaces where authority formerly reigned. Those changes didn't go unnoticed. Some respected her elaboration. Others questioned it. But Steffy no longer sought universal blessing. She had learned the cost of pleasing everyone and the peril of doing so. As time passed, the megacity's collaborative memory of Sheila began to fade, but the assignments she left before endured. People came more conservative about who they trusted, further purposeful about boundaries. Sheila's heritage, ironically, came one of caution rather than terror. She was no longer the monster cashing in plain sight. but the memorial of what happens when patterns are ignored for too long. Steffy still no way allowed herself to forget fully. She knew better than anyone that some stories circled back when least anticipated. That mindfulness kept her sharp, but it no longer consumed her. She refused to let expectation of Sheila's return steal the peace.